in protecting the interest of government. Under Sharia, under the practice of the prophets, it's our free will that has to be defended, and we make the decisions of where we will put our life on the line and for what we will put our life on the line. Very big difference. Perhaps now we can have a better understanding of why the practice of the prophets is so hated by certain people. When people look at the world around us and some people say, I know there's a God, but I will never worship this God because of the state in which this world is. Just look at it. How can a God allow these things to happen? And other people say, I don't believe there even is a God, because if there was a God, the world would never be like this. How did we get to have these thoughts and ideas? The reason is we have been taken away from the knowledge of God. See, God has given us free will, and He's given us the guidance that we must follow for our world to be the best possible world. But if we don't follow that, there will be the consequences, and what we are facing is the consequences. When people say God must not allow this to happen, they are saying God must now intervene, must take away our free will, and force us to act in a particular way. That is totally contrary to what we are. God does not take away our free will. If we want this world to be a better place, we have to make it a better place. The world is a reflection of what we do and what we are. When we don't do what we're supposed to do, this is the kind of quagmire, this kind of cesspit that the world results in. And it's not God's fault, it's our fault. And the solution lay in our hands. Why is it that we are so disconnected from God and disconnected from ourselves? Why? What is the secret to this? Yes, the secret lay in our free will. The secret lie in our free will. You know, society has become such a bad place, and all of us are living in it like this. One of the companions of the last prophet asked him, he says, what if I am living in a time where everybody has forgotten the teachings of God and doing all the things that God says if they do will result in very bad consequences for them? What am I supposed to do? The prophet of God did not say you must take a suicide belt and go and kill yourselves among them. He didn't say you must take a gun and go and kill all of them. He didn't say you must go and join them. His advice was, distance yourself from them. Go live alone in the forest in a hollow tree. That will be better for you. What was he saying? He was saying that they have a free will, and they have a right to exercise their free will. And you don't have to become like them. Leave them. Go live on your own. You've spoken to them, they don't listen to you. Go and live on your own. Don't become like them. But how do we know what is good and bad? Because we've been so distant from God. The secret is in the free will. This free will, which gives us the opportunity of totally rejecting God, is the secret of us finding God. How is this so? It is like this. God created us with free will. I'm reading from my monitor below. God created us with free will. Free will allows us to be curious. And we go and we inquire and we inquisitive, we stick our nose into everything. We inquire about the world around us. If we have no free will, we are restricted. We are hamstrung. We can only do what we are allowed to do. We can only think the way we are allowed to think. We can only hold certain ideas which we are forced to hold. We can't explore. We can't push our barriers, push our limits. We cannot move outward. When we have free will, we can do that. We are curious, we explore, we learn the world around us. When we observe the world around us, we start observing and studying nature. When we study nature, we begin to realize that there's an order in society. For example, the force of gravity is always constant. And as we study these things, we realize how predictable it is, and we realize there has to be a unitary force that has created and controls all of this. Because if there was more than one source of authority, there would be conflict. And the fact there is this order, we realize there is a solitary force, this power. And when we realize this force exists, we realize that it is stupid to allow ourselves to be submitted, to submit ourselves to man. We realize that there is order in the natural world. This free person will never subject himself to man, and this liberates us, making us free. A free man develops a sense of self, and with a sense of self, a sense of self-worth, a sense of self-respect. And a man with self-respect abandons lying and falsehood. His word is his honor. And when we abandon falsehood, we seek the truth everywhere. Then we want to know the truth about ourselves. And we start looking everywhere for answers. And then we come across the prophets. And the prophets, we see them living a certain kind of life, which is just not words, they actually live it. And then we realize that they know something that we don't. And when we see how honest these people are and how true they are and the kind of life they lead, we become attracted to them. We begin to trust them. We begin to believe them. And we begin to understand the knowledge that God had given them. And through them we get access to this knowledge. Through them we begin to learn about God. And when we learn the truth about God, how God made us free, how God wants us to be free, how the kind of society God wants us to live under is true freedom, we begin to love God. And when we begin to love God, we want to worship God. And that's when we begin to pray to God. And the secret is free will. You take away a person's free will, he will never be able to progress to the stage where he is able to find God. And that is why societies that prevent us from exercising our free will makes it impossible for us to find God. That is why in these societies we find such a horrible world that we are living in, because the system that has become adopted around the world is one that excludes God from our world. There is no religion in politics. The values of God is taken away. Our free will is taken away by law. We are forced to obey man's laws. We are not free to follow God's guidance. We are not free to find God. This is the reason why the world is the way it is today. And where do you think it came from? Who is it that decided that he is going to make us submit to him? Who is it that knows that we must take away the knowledge of God from us in order for us to become inferior? Who is going to implement a system that takes away our free will and as a result takes us away the knowledge of God? Who do you think this is?